This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. And today, as my special guest, we have the former Kato, Max Moon. He wrestled for Bad Company, Orient Express. His real name is Paul Diamond, or his best wrestling name is Paul Diamond. That's not actually your real name.
There you go. Yeah.
What is your real name?
It's Tom Boric.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're Croatian, right?
I am Croatian, yes. Born and grew up there till I was 13, and then moved to Canada and finished high school there, and went to college in Virginia on a soccer scholarship. Played some pro soccer for a few years, and when that ended, I didn't want a real job, so turned to wrestling. Met one of the Malenkos actually at a Gold's Gym in Tampa, and Boris Malenko, the dad, was still alive at the time. He's the one that is mostly responsible for training me.
Did you have interest in pro wrestling while you were still a soccer player?
I did. You know what? I from Croatia, I wound up in Winnipeg, which at that time, you had AWA, Vern's organization, would be on TV, and I started watching it and kind of got interested. Went to a couple of live shows at the Winnipeg Arena, and it seemed interesting. It seemed like as long as you were a good athlete, that you ought to be able to do well. So once the North American Soccer League folded back in 1984, like I said, I don't know. For me, I just wanted to make a living in sports of some kind. And actually, soccer was my everything. As you know, Europe, most of the world, and actually it's growing in the United States now as well. Soccer is the biggest sport there is. And that's what I wanted to do. My father played back in the day. And, but that came to an end, that there was no other place to go other than to go back to Europe. And I didn't want to do that. So I just thought, let me give wrestling a try.
Now, the Malenkos were known for being shooters a little bit as well. Did they stretch you much when you were learning to train?
No, not at all. At that point, I think it already kind of was getting to where it was easier to get into professional wrestling. I've heard a lot of stories, prior to that, years before, where guys wanted to get in and they would get the heck beat out of them and stretched. There was my former partner, Pat Tanaka. He was trained by Hiro Matsuda, which, Florida Championship Wrestling. And man, they beat the heck out of Pat. They sent him to Japan, where they broke his leg and, all kind of stuff. So no, that never happened. I think, Boris Malenko was just interested in giving somebody an opportunity. And well, he was having to make a living too. So if he beat the heck out of you and you didn't come to his school, then he's losing out. So that's kind of what I felt was going on. And I'm very, very fortunate and lucky to have had those guys. To me, I don't know, I didn't attend any other wrestling schools, but to me, I would say it is and it was one of the best.
Did you ever see that video that came out in recent years with Plan B, where Boris kind of exposed the business probably before you ever met him? And what was your reaction when you saw it?
I did see it. I actually listened to it. There was a few guys, I think Orton and Bob Roop and a few other guys. They were trying to, they tried to start their own company, which I guess didn't work out. And, they felt like they were being shortchanged. I really didn't know what to think of it. And, at that point where I saw it, really didn't understand the business that much. So, but I was surprised, it seems like it didn't really affect much after that. Although I have to say, when I started training with Malenko, I was told by other people that were in the business that I was never going to get anywhere and be blackballed because Malenko trained me and stuff. And, that just wasn't the case. In fact, he was responsible for me getting my first job, which was NWA back on TBS in 1985.
What was that experience like?
You know what? It was quite interesting. I mean, I was, very inexperienced. Ole Anderson at that time owned the company, and he ran the show and stuff. So I was just green and just wanting to learn, and I got an opportunity to work on the road, which was great for me. Again, not really knowing what the business was about at that time. I just really was happy to have been able to get a job and didn't have to, work the independent shows with 20 people in the audience. Although, at that point when you start, you really don't care. You just want to learn.
How did the NWA wrestlers that were more established treat you?
There was no problem, actually. You know what? And one of the guys I have to really be grateful to was Ronnie Garvin. And I think actually Ronnie Garvin was a part of that. The thing you mentioned about the expose that they did, and so they told him that I was coming and stuff, and I would ride. Ronnie would take me to I'd ride with him to the shows and stuff, and kind of learn from him as well. He was a great guy, but nobody had any problem. I mean, just another guy coming in, that got a job, and the wrestling business is not so much always how much but who you know. So that's how the guys would usually get in.
Who would have been the biggest star you worked with in those early days?
Didn't really work with any stars, unless I was getting squashed on TV. So it was shortly after I got hired. Ole sold out to Jim Crockett. So, here I am. I had been there, I think, for a couple of months. I was living in Tampa at the time. Of course, they were in Atlanta. I went home for a few days. I came back for the TV taping, and man, there's 100 guys, and Jimmy Crockett took over, and it's like, what's going on? And at that point, they just kind of used me as just to put people over on TV. So I worked with Barbarian on TV, and trying to think who else. I didn't last very long. They gave me I worked a couple more months, and they had so many guys to do what I was doing and to add the knowledge that, like I said, being that green. So I was let go maybe a couple of months afterwards, and I wound up in San Antonio the first time for Texas All-Star Wrestling.
Yes, and you had a little bit of a push there as a tag team wrestler, I think, with Nick Kanitsky first. How was that?
Well, actually, to correct, so that my first partner was Frankie the Thumper Lancaster. Ever heard of him?
No, I have not heard of him. No.
Okay. Well, I think he left San Antonio after a short while, and I think he went to work for Bill Watts. Whatever. But yeah, then my next tag team partner was Nick Kanitsky. He was greener than me, and it just didn't work out real well. So they were really trying to, create like another Rock and Roll Express or the Fantastics or whatever. And at that time, Shawn Michaels had just started wrestling. His first territory was Bill Watts in Louisiana, and he had came back home. And, as far as I know, he had always wanted to be a singles wrestler. And, obviously that's how it turned out. But at that time, after Nick Kanitsky and I didn't really work out and didn't do as well as they would have liked, Shawn Michaels became my tag team partner. We were known as the American Force.
How was Shawn Michaels in those days? I know you had a long friendship with him throughout the years, but how was he in those early years?
I mean, you know what? It was really good because we both were wanting to learn, and so we rode together to the shows and obviously back home, and we just wouldn't stop talking about what we did wrong, what we could do better, what we did right. And Shawn, great athlete, and he had a ton of different moves, and I learned from him. Although a funny little story, if I can tell you. So at the time, we were already a tag team, and we had a show in Odessa, Texas, and I think it was a 6-man tag, and Sean somehow finishes got messed up. Sean wound up pinning everybody. And so at that time, the guy that was the booker in San Antonio was this guy, Al Madrill. So they said, well, since this happened, we're going to give Paul a singles match. And, I had been learning stuff from Sean, different moves and things. So when I had my singles match on TV, I used some of those moves. And, I thought, wow, great. I got some new stuff, and we're a tag team. We can look like, we can do what the other guy can do. And so the next day that I saw Sean, man, he was pissed off. You're trying to be Shawn Michaels. You need to be Paul Diamond, so that was kind of interesting. I'm like, really didn't understand where that was coming from, but that's kind of the way Sean was.
So he already had a bit of an attitude even back then.
Absolutely. And he had been in the business for maybe a year.
Now, I understand you also had some contact with Chris Adams in those days. How was he?
Not really sure where that story came from. However, untrue.
Okay. Well, good that you cleared that up. It's on the internet.
I don't, man, I don't know where that came from. I think I worked with Chris Adams once in San Antonio, just a match on a card, but that's it.
Apparently, he helped add to your wrestling skill repertoire.
Somehow must have been. I'm not really sure. But he had nothing to do with my career.
So you soon after went to Continental Wrestling in Memphis, where you were working for Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett. How was that experience for you?
That was an invaluable experience. I had spent almost, I don't know, 2.5 years there, and I learned so much. They were always very, very creative in the angles that they did and the storylines they told, and also building, the wrestlers. They would, they couldn't afford to pay the big stars, so they would bring in guys that didn't have that much experience, but would create something out of them. And so, but yeah, and as far as, like I said, just working different angles and different storylines and being involved in different types of matches, the chain matches and dog collar matches and, everything. That's how Memphis was. Very, very creative. In fact, another funny fact, one night in Nashville, they had a match with a stipulation: loser eats X-Lax cake.
I hope that was kayfabed.
I would believe so. But no, yeah, it was a good place, and actually at that time, Jeff Jarrett had just started. He was refereeing while he was still in high school, and ring crew and all that. And as soon as he graduated from high school was shortly after I got there, and I got a chance to work with Jeff from pretty much day one. And he was involved in the tag team scene at the time. He was just very young and learning, and that was really cool. We had some great matches, and I got to get to know Jeff real well.
Was he the partier that he has the reputation for already in those days, or did that?
What? No, not at all. He was just a young kid at the time, and I was really shocked when I found out what had happened with him as he got older. So I would have never imagined that Jeff would have been a partier at all.
And what was your opinion of Jerry Jarrett? A lot of people say he was cheap and everything, but he has the reputation of being a great mind.
Well, yeah, for sure. He was a great mind. That's what, that's where all these different things came from, like the fabulous ones, right? And like Tennessee, they were like the first ones to do vignettes with guys and pictures and just different things to make their wrestlers look like much bigger stars than they really were. And I remember, because we wrestled a lot of small towns. Tennessee basically was a weekly territory, which had Memphis Monday night, Louisville, Kentucky Tuesday, Evansville, Indiana Wednesday. Then Thursday, Friday, they'd have a spot show, whether it was, some small town in Tennessee or Kentucky or Arkansas. And when you came to those small towns, that's all the TV wrestling that those people saw. And when they put up the posters, they put on there, TV wrestling stars coming here. And, doing, like I said, doing the vignettes and making the guys look bigger than they actually were. It drew pretty well, and they created bigger interest than if you didn't do that. So yeah, Jerry Jarrett was very creative, as well as Jerry Lawler. They kind of split the booking. Jerry Jarrett would book for a few months, and then when he'd kind of run dry or whatever, and things were going as well, Jerry Lawler would take over. So both of those guys, learned a lot from them. I really admire Jerry Lawler's work. What a great mind.
Would you expect Jerry Lawler still to be wrestling now? I don't know how old he is, but he's got to be approaching 70.
Yeah, I think he's 71 or 2 or something. Would I be? I wouldn't expect anybody to be. I just turned 61 myself, and man, I couldn't imagine getting in the ring. But what I can say is the way that Jerry Lawler always wrestled, which was, he again, great mind in the ring, never took a whole lot of bumps. He worked like a guy that was, like a Hulk Hogan, 6'8", 300 pounds. And he didn't, take all these crazy bumps that we took as, smaller guys, which, he's no bigger, but just the way he worked. So if he's doing the same thing that he was doing back then, he could probably wrestle till he's 95.
Yeah, and he's 72. I just looked it up as you were talking. So everyone freaking out that Ric Flair's coming back at 73. Well, Jerry Lawler's only a year younger.
Yeah, but Jerry Lawler hasn't done the slam off the top and the upside down thing in a turnbuckle and all that stuff. I don't think he's ever done that. His back barely touched the mat in all the matches that he's had.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, I guess you started teaming with Pat Tanaka in the Memphis territory as Bad Company. How did you guys start teaming together? Was that you coming up with the idea, or was it given to you? And how did you come up with the name? So when I came to Tennessee, it was after the San Antonio run in 1986, and I came in as a babyface, and things were it was a slow start for me, and then it got to a point where they really didn't have a whole lot for me. Pat had arrived a short while after, and he got involved. Well, they actually tagged him. He was tag team partners of Jeff Jarrett's at first. And then it was Jerry Jarrett's whole idea, to turn me heel. And actually the whole angle was that eventually, Jeff was tagging, I believe it was, what was it? Oh, Billy Travis. And, they lost the match, and Billy Travis had to leave town. And then Billy Travis came back under a hood, and somehow it wound up being that whoever, if you proved that it was Billy Travis, you got like $5,000 or something. Anyway, so I wind up turning heel. I take the mask off of Billy Travis, and then everybody wants to kick my ass because this happened. So we had actually a three-way. And at that point, we still weren't a tag team. But then, after the three-way, we beat up Jeff, and then Billy Travis came out, and this is where our tag team kind of started. I don't think at that point they really thought that, it would last or that we would click. Well, nobody really knew. But things worked out real well.
I don't think the Bad Company name probably came a little bit later on. And, Downtown Bruno was our manager at the time. We actually, Paul Heyman had just gotten there to Tennessee, and, we had talked to Paul and stuff, and we wanted Paul to be our manager, but they didn't agree with that. They gave us Downtown Bruno. And as far as the name, like I said, I'm not really sure where that came from. But it was, a while once we started working together and things started to click, we realized that probably we would be a lot better together than we were, as a single, especially because, we weren't huge guys, especially Pat. And we were doing well as a tag team.
And for any fans that don't know, Downtown Bruno is Harvey Whippleman.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Now, I'll just skip ahead for 1 second because a fan here tipped $5 to me to know what was it like when you wrestled The Undertaker.
Oh, man. It was easy. Obviously not much of a match. Undertaker he arrived in the WWF at the time, a short while after I had gotten there. So, they were trying to get him over. He was it was basically about the gimmick and having Paul Bear in the urn and all that. And then he just, did a few moves, and I got tombstoned.
Were you surprised that he's gone on to have this 30-year career and is thought of as one of the best of all time?
Yes, definitely. And in my mind, I have my best of all time, and Undertaker wouldn't be on that list. I think maybe the Undertaker gimmick might be one of the best of all time, but as far as a worker, he was good, but not what I consider, best of all time.
Was he nice backstage?
Oh yeah, no, he was a great guy. Yeah, no problem. And again, it was early on as he just arrived there, so I'm not sure. He was there, like you said, 30 years. So I don't know what he turned out to be like later on. But from what I heard, he was always very supportive, in the dressing room to everybody, and was one of those guys that everybody respected, and he just wouldn't accept any kind of shit from anybody. So if anything went wrong as far as Vince or whatever, I think he would approach them and try and get it corrected.
Yeah, he was known as being the locker room leader for several decades.
Right.
When you were back there, did anybody have a position like that?
You know what? I'm not really sure. I'm trying to think. No, not at that time. I mean, Hogan obviously had a lot of power and stuff, and Hogan was he was a good guy to me, and he tried to help me, but I don't know how much. He was probably more so for himself than a locker room leader, and I can't really think of anyone else at the time that would have fit that.
I think in your day too, there was more veterans that had success in a lot of territories, and there was a lot more egos than there were when Undertaker was on top. There was less guys overall that had been stars in other places.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, just the tag teams, all the guys. Well, what happened, obviously, it was a few years after Vince kind of took over the wrestling world, and he just collected all the stars from all the regional territories. So, all these guys had been on top in other places, and, everybody thought they should be on top still. And yet, that wasn't the case. But yeah, I mean, Bushwhackers, Legion of Doom, they created Demolition. Those guys that, worked in other places, being main eventers, Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart. I mean, so, and the singles guys as well, obviously, that, Ted DiBiase and Jake the Snake and Ricky Steamboat. And I mean, all those guys, were a big deal somewhere else, but there's no way, there's just not enough room to, have all those guys be on top. Somebody had to, do other positions. So yeah, it definitely was that way. It was different, I'm sure, than, as time went on and those guys were gone and you got new guys coming in.
I understand that you feuded with the Nasty Boys in Memphis. How were they to work with?
Man, that I was shocked. That really, that turned out great. It did. They wound up, I couldn't believe, obviously they've always been heels, but in Memphis, when they first came in and we worked that angle with them, they were big baby faces. And I mean, at that time they were still pretty green. But I can't really come, we had all kinds of, again, another thing about Tennessee, I have to go, they created gimmick kind of matches and stipulations and stuff that would make it easier than to just, work a regular match. Yeah, man, a lot of memories from Tennessee. If I can't, so at one point they had the Wheel of Torture. So the first week they had Lawler's girlfriend was Vanna Black, and they spun the wheel, and whatever it landed on, that's the stipulation you'd have for the match. Loser eats dog food. Loser gets shocked by a cattle prod. Loser gets painted yellow. I mean, crazy stuff, right? And so the first, we worked the Nasty Boys, and the first week, and this was the most ridiculous thing. I don't know who thought it would be a good idea, because they put all the heels over the first week, and then they had the next week the same Wheel of Torture thing. You spun it again, and then all the baby faces went over. Wow, that was quite interesting. But yeah, in our matches with the Nasty Boys, basically the first week they had to eat dog food, and then the next week Pat got painted yellow.
Was it hard to get the paint off?
Yeah, it was. They actually, I think Sags just poured the bucket of paint on Pat's head. So yeah.
And as far as the AWA, you're very well known for your run there. How did you end up going to the AWA? Was that through its connection with Memphis?
It was not. I don't know if you are familiar. Pat's father was, I don't know, half owner, part owner, Duke Kiyomoka of Florida Championship Wrestling. He was with Eddie Graham. So any of the, guys that whose families involved in the business, they're always kind of taken care of and somebody always made sure that those guys would have a job. So at the time we had finished up in Tennessee, there was a small organization starting out in Pensacola. We spent a couple of months there. And at that time, Wahoo McDaniel was the booker for Vern AWA. And, Pat knew Wahoo from his dad and from Florida and different things. And so actually, I have to give credit where credit is due. And, Pat called Wahoo and he decided to bring us in.
Before I ask you more about that, there's a fan that tipped me $10, and he said you're a great worker. He loved your matches with Tanaka, and he wants to know, what do you think about the death of tag team wrestling?
It's sad. I don't watch a whole lot of wrestling. I've been watching maybe a little bit more recently since the AWA got started, but man, it just I don't know. What I see is just if you got to be an acrobat or a gymnast and just doing all this stuff. There's no psychology, none of that at all. It's kind of sad, to see the way that it's gone. And I mean, and not only like, tag team wrestling. I mean, somebody's going to get killed, man. I swear. I saw somebody like dive off a ladder or something on AEW, and like, where is it going to stop? I'm not really sure, but I know we did some things along those lines early on, especially with the rockers and stuff. But everybody's trying to go higher and further and more flips, and so yeah, I'm just really not sure until somebody really gets hurt or dies in the ring. I don't know where it's going to stop, and I don't know how the fans see it. I mean, you just sit there and you watch a bunch of moves. There's no psychology. There's no story to the matches, and that's what I really am most disappointed about.
The other thing about some of those gymnastic styles moves, it looks like they would have to be cooperating with each other to do them. It doesn't even look like it's something you would do to somebody if you were actually trying to hurt them.
Right. Very, very true. And the other thing I just thought of as well is, I mean, when you do all those kind of moves, and somebody dives off a ladder and you go through a table, and then in the next minute you're back on your feet and you're throwing them into the ropes and doing something else. No, I know wrestling's entertainment, and it's whatever they want to call it. It's not real. Well, it is still hard work, but you at least want to try and create some sort of, I don't know, not credibility, I guess, at least for people to think that this move actually is hurting the other person. And where's the wrestling moves that usually when you started a match you did exchange some wrestling, chain wrestling, and that kind of stuff. Now they start a match with 10 clotheslines. What's it all mean? Nothing. If I got to give you 10 clotheslines, you got to get up, and you get up and you beat me up. What does it all mean?
Yeah, I can tell that you're not a regular viewer, as a lot of people aren't anymore. But as far as your AWA run, they gave you Diamond Dallas Page as your manager, and he's gone on to have a Hall of Fame career. What was it like working with him?
You know what? It was awesome. The primary reason why they brought him in the first place, because Pat and I were never real good talkers, never good on the mic. And so we needed somebody to speak for us. And I think, he had just sent in a video or something to the AWA, and they decided to bring him in. At that time, I don't think he even, I don't think he had any thought of becoming a wrestler. But as he managed us and he was around, he was ringside and watched the matches, I think he realized it's something that he wanted to do and he could do. I think, Dusty Rhodes was responsible for training Diamond Dallas Page.
And of course, you had your feud with the Midnight Rockers in the AWA that everyone remembers.
Right.
How was that, and how had Sean progressed by this time since Texas?
It's the funny thing, right? Like I said, Sean always wanted to be, a singles wrestler, right? And so, as I had mentioned, we were tag team partners in Texas, and then the guy that trained him, Jose Lothario, he was, a Mexican wrestler. Not sure if you're familiar, but that's who was responsible for training Sean, and he had connections, and so Sean got a position in the AWA, and he left me, whatever. He wanted to be a singles wrestler, and he arrives in the AWA, and guess what happens? They give him Marty Jannetty. So, kind of didn't quite go like he had planned, but they did very well. But that's not what Sean wanted to do. But as far as what you asked, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent. The Midnight Rockers, at the time that we got to the AWA, were over good and stuff, and they were the tag team champions. But I don't think they had been there that long. But as soon as we got there, the decision was made that they were going to drop the belts to us, and they were not very pleased. And basically at the time we would go to Las Vegas to the Showboat casino and tape 4 weeks, 1 month worth of TV shows. So the first time we went, we had a match with them, which was a non-title match, and we beat them. And then the next time we went, they dropped the belts. And, again, when that came up, I remember the meeting with the people in charge, and they were not happy. And I don't know, that maybe they had a point. Maybe, we could have extended that and gone a lot longer with the angle. I think, them dropping the belts to us at the time sort of made them leave earlier than they may have stayed a little bit longer. And then, once they dropped the belts, they saw, this is not going to work. And they went and tried to get in contact with Vince again, and, wound up getting hired back over there.
Jeff would like to know, how was your pay in the AWA days?
Not great. And you know what? At the time that we arrived there was 1988. AWA basically had lost all their talent, and not having talent, they lost a bunch of big arenas and towns that they used to run regularly. So not only was the pay not great, they were not running that many shows. So it was really kind of a struggle. They were really struggling to book towns just because, all the stars. I mean, at one time, they had everybody, right? Bobby Heenan, Jesse DeBody, Hulk Hogan. I mean, you name it, Rick Martel, Nick Bockwink. I mean, everybody was there, and Vern killed it all because, well, he, I guess one of the things was he wouldn't put the belt on Hogan. And I'm not sure how that would have turned out even if he had. And as far as, what I heard recently anyway is that, the problem was the split of the royalty money, the gimmick money, the pictures and whatever Hulk was selling. Vern just wouldn't give in. So I'm not really sure. But yeah, so they just, it was, the pay wasn't that great, and I understand that it probably didn't have much to give, or I'm sure they could have always given a little bit more, but it was a struggle just because we didn't work regularly or that much in a month.
Michael Collins wants to know if you thought Vern seemed out of touch in the 80s, and if you saw signs of the business already passed him by. I guess you kind of already answered that partly.
Yeah, and I can add to that for sure. Just a quick story, Vern considered himself to be a big star. And, at that time, WWF had already taken over, and, they were giving people competitive matches on television, whereas Vern still stuck with his formula of just having squash matches on TV. And so we were sitting in a meeting, and Vern was there. And I remember, telling Vern, why can't we beat up somebody that matters? Well, I matter. You can beat me up. I am the star around here. Oh, okay. Gotcha. So yeah, that kind of told you all you needed to know. But yeah, no, for sure. He just, he didn't see it like that the business had moved on and he just hadn't changed.
Towards the end of your AWA run, you teamed with Dale Wilkes, who passed away this year. Any memories about him?
Yeah, for sure.
Last year, sorry, it was 2021 that he died.
Right. I saw that. Man, rest in peace, Dale. He was a great guy. I remember him from, he trained at Brad Rangan's wrestling school in Minneapolis there. So, know him from back then when he was still training, and was a great athlete. as the Bad Company split up and stuff, I thought Del and I, it worked out real well. I really wasn't looking at the time, to perhaps, have another tag team partner that was going to, or I was going to stay as a tag team for a long time. It was just kind of a time space filler. I was, getting ready to leave her. And so they just needed somebody to fight for the AWA tag titles. But I loved working with Del. Again, we always got along. Great guy, great athlete. And I'm just sad to, see him gone way too soon.
I think that you and Pat lost the titles in the AWA at one point to Ken Patera and Brad Reagans, who you just mentioned.
Yes.
Ken is a hilarious guy who I've interviewed, I think, 3 times. What was he like to work with?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, we only worked with him a couple of times, but, he did his power stuff, his strongman stuff. And at that time, things were really coming to an end, and they needed to put the belts on somebody else because, we were out of there. So, it wouldn't have been my choice of a team to drop the belts to or to work with, because it was just a different kind of style, but we did the best we could. And I thought it worked out okay. And again, we were out of there, so it didn't really matter.
Did you go straight to the WWE after that, or was there independent time in between?
There was independent time, and there was actually, I had considered, even just getting out of the business altogether. In fact, as I finished things up in Minneapolis, Pat actually, again, I'm sure, I can't say I am sure 100%, but he was the original member of the Orient Express in the WWF with Sato. And I'm guessing, again, his father, that connection had something to do with him getting the job. I can't say for sure, but that's what I'm guessing. And so he was there for a while. I actually decided to go back to school. I was going to do like computer repairs or stuff. And I'd actually went for my first semester back. And, I said, I don't want to know anything that's going on in the business at this point. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to do it. I just want to finish this and then, perhaps go back to it. Well, lo and behold, maybe halfway through, I got a call from the WWF office, and they wanted me to, come out and work some matches. They wanted to look at me. And of course, I just couldn't turn it down. And I thought, okay, well, it's an opportunity. So I wound up going, and, things worked out, at least for a while.
What were the contracts like in those days? You always hear that it was for like 10 days.
So, I'm glad that guys these days have contracts that actually have, I'm guessing they have a figure of what you're going to make weekly. And then if things are better, you do better. Well, back then, there was no money listed on the contract. WWF, their whole, to fulfill their side of the contract, right? They had to give you 10 bookings in a year and pay you at least $150. So if they booked you 10 times and you got that money, now you were tied to them for the whole year, and they could make your ass sit at home and do nothing, but you couldn't go and work anywhere else according to the contract. Also, if you sign a contract, I'm guessing then you're working for that company, you're an employee. But no, that's not, well, I guess it's just a wrestling business altogether, but WWF as well, right? They tell you who you're going to wrestle, where you're going to wrestle, when to be there, all the things you need to do, but yet you're not an employee. You're considered a 1099, an independent contractor. So you get nothing, no benefits, none of that. So I just never understood how that worked. But yeah, those contracts were very silly. I was just, man, I would have signed anything. I would have signed my life away. I just wanted to, be there and work there. But looking at it later on, wow, that's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, in 1990, they were still just selling out the Sky Dome for WrestleMania 6. So they were still coming down a little bit from the big wave of the 80s, but still going strong. Did you sign for numerous years, or what was the deal?
Yeah, I actually, what's going on here? Sorry. Why did that come up? I don't know. I didn't touch anything. Sorry, we had a glitch on the computer. It was a 3-year contract, but again, that really didn't mean anything because again, they could have just booked you 10 times and then there was people like that, not necessarily book them 10 times, but they worked part-time and only got a few bookings. And once they took over, there really wasn't most of the smaller territories had already closed down. I think the only one left was like Tennessee, or I'm not sure if they had anything left in Texas or anything. So there was no place to go to make money. So they kind of had you by the cojones, as they say.
Did you ever have any weird experiences with Pat Patterson or anything, like some guys like I was?
No, you know what? The only thing that ever happened to me, they would have, and this was just kind of as a joke. I mean, I knew all about Pat, but I was in line to get food at a TV taping, and he came from behind and tried to pull my pants down, but that was it. Nothing else. And I didn't see anything else going on either, but he just laughed and I laughed it off, and that was that.
Yeah, that type of stuff wouldn't go over very well today.
No, probably not.
So you ended up taking over in the Orient Express eventually. Were you happy about that? Because you were just kind of undercard.
I was very happy because I was one of those guys, when I came in, I didn't work all the shows. I kind of had a part-time schedule somewhat, maybe, 3/4 or whatever. And basically I was Paul Diamond, the guy that just put people over. So I didn't really have any kind of a position. And then I get a call and, Sato had decided to go back to Japan and quit actually wrestling, but took like an agent's job over there. So they needed someone to fill in. And, it's funny because prior to that, it was a match in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And the card was, I was Paul Diamond, and I was supposed to work my singles match, and it was the Rockers and the Orient Express. Well, Sato wasn't there. And so I'm not sure exactly. I guess, they obviously would have been familiar with the fact that we had worked with the Rockers in the AWA. So they put me in that match, and we tore the house down with those guys. I think that may have had, something to do with the fact that they put me in the Orient Express.
And you guys did have some matches with the Rockers in WWE, including 1991 Royal Rumble, which a lot of people still talk about today. How were those matches for you as an experience?
Oh man. Well, you know what? Any match with those guys was awesome. I mean, we just had a chemistry between all four of us. We clicked. But I respect those guys, man. Great workers. Janetti, of course, Sean, Pat. So, you had four guys that kind of, and just working with them also in the AWA, we had worked together quite a bit. So we really didn't have to think too much. Everybody kind of knew what the other person was going to do. So it was very enjoyable. That's probably, the best time of my career, or at least as far as an opponent. If anybody asked me, who I liked working the best, I'd say those guys for sure.
Mike and some other people have wanted to know, at one point they had all three of the Orient Express members together. Was there ever any talk of keeping you guys as a faction like they had Demolition with three for a while, or that was just a brief gimmick?
Yeah, that was just a brief gimmick. Again, Sato had decided, he didn't want to have anything to do with, being on the road and full time and stuff. So they just brought him in, a few times. But no, that was never mentioned.
And apparently you had a big win over the Brooklyn Brawler at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. It's on your Wikipedia profile.
Apparently so. That I think that would have been his Max Moon.
Oh, that would have been his Max Moon. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
How did that come about with the whole you taking over Conan? I guess he had some type of falling out and left the company. And...
I'll give you the whole story. One of the things though that I have to sort of bring up and try and clarify. I'm not much of a social media person. I do have a bunch of followers on Facebook and stuff. I kind of read things, look at things. I'm not much to respond. I'm not much of a texter. But so every now and then, Conan was the original Max Moon. Wrong. Max Moon, actually the name Max Moon never came into being until, in fact, also when Conan left and I got the position to be that character, they were going to call it the Comet Kid. And in fact, the first couple of times that I put on that costume and, did a dark match, they called me the Comet Kid. It was not until like a month later, I show up for TV and they're giving out booking sheets and they go, Max Moon. Who the heck's that? Nobody knew. And they never even came to me and said, hey, from now on, you're Max Moon. But anyways, so back to the story. As far as Conan, yes, it was all Conan's idea. That character actually, other than the spandex costume, also had this helmet that had like these flashing lights. And there was like, the two arm pieces, one that I kept or that Vince decided to keep that shot out flames, the other one that shot out streamers. There was also like a football shoulder pads type of thing that if you push the button, like smoke came out. Well, what was used in that was like fire extinguisher stuff. And if you were going to go on the road with that, you would have to find a place where they refilled fire extinguishers in each town and have that done. So that wasn't going to work. But yeah, the whole gimmick was Conan's idea. Well, I'm not sure why or how. They tried him out and, he had the thing that he did. And I think it was Hershey, Pennsylvania for the television taping. And he just didn't show up. And that day, I'm sure you're aware that, so they have these three sisters that from Chicago. They're sewing all the guys' costumes for all the different gimmicks and stuff. And I was talking to them and I said to them, I said, they made you rush this thing and now it's all done and you got nobody to put it on. I mean, if you made a few small alterations, I could fit it. And, the weird thing was that across the way from them was Vince's office. And we were kind of loud and carrying on. And he opened the door and he looked out and he goes, well, what are you guys talking about? I said, oh, nothing. I was just telling them that, about the costume and that if you made a few small alterations, I could probably fit it. He goes, yeah. And he shuts the door. And, we kept on talking and stuff. And it's probably a half hour went by and he opens the door and he looks at me, he goes, he points at me. Go, whoa, what did I do? He goes, come here. Okay. I go in his office. He shuts the door. He goes, you know what you were talking about a while ago? He goes, you got it. It's yours. He puts out his hand. We shook hands, and that was that.
So as far as, I guess there's a fan bringing up Conan kind of gets offended that you did that. You basically just jumped on an opportunity that came up.
Absolutely. I see that criticized me for stealing. I didn't steal anything. I mean, he's the guy that left it. And if I was given an opportunity, what would you expect me to do? Here I was, at that point, Orient Express had already split up. I was actually fortunate they kept me on just I was working steady, but it was, again, putting guys over as Kato. And somebody was going to give you an opportunity. And it's not as if he was there and I took it from him. He just decided he didn't want to do it. So if somebody was going to do it, hell, might as well have been me.
And of course, you're best remembered doing that gimmick as being on the first Monday Night Raw against Shawn Michaels. Any memories of that?
Yes, a few. So, the Max Moon, the part of the costume, as I said, the two arm pieces, the one that shot flames and the other one shot streamers. And those things were very flimsy. They were made by guys in California, and not their fault, but they made stuff for movies, which got used once. And that was it. But I had to go on the road every day and use, those things over and over, right? So the night of Monday Night Raw, I'm walking to the ring, and, there's a cameraman maybe 10 feet in front of me, and he's walking backwards. And normally, I would raise my right arm straight up and hit the button and shoot the flames. Well, I raised my arm, I hit the button, and nothing happens. And here, live TV, right? And man, I got pissed off. And so I'm going, oh, shit, what the? And as my arm is coming down and it gets straight eye level, the thing goes off. The flames hit the cameraman right in the face. He drops the camera like he had been shot dead, drops down on the ground. It like singed off some of his eyebrow, some of his beard. I'll never forget that. And if you go on YouTube and you watch the video, it's from up high, the shot, but you can see as the flames come out and hits the cameraman. But as far as the match, it was my pleasure to do it, and it was a fun match to have with Shawn.
Did you get in any trouble over that, or it was just
no? It was just a fluke. I mean, the thing wouldn't go off, and then as my arm was coming down, man, right in between the eyes. And like I said, I thought he shot, man. He like dropped the camera, and like, damn.
Many people on here want to know your thoughts on Mr. Fuji and his ribs and his unfortunate passing a couple years ago.
Well, Fuji was a great ribber, but if you're gonna rib somebody, you got to expect to be ribbed back. And he wasn't so good at taking ribs. So, and he did some, I guess he thought it was funny at the time, but he definitely was that. And he would not take it. And especially, the biggest thing with Fuji was his top hat, the part of his gimmick. And God forbid you should ever touch that.
Did you travel with him on the road?
Yeah, we, actually, as a part of his deal, we had to drive Fuji, and he didn't have to pay for any part of the rent-a-car.
That's good for him, I guess.
Yeah, well, I guess. I guess at the time, the way rumors have it and stuff, but they kept him on the road. They kept him working. He wasn't making that much money. So that was a way for them to, but at least I got to go to a shitload of Chinese food restaurants all over the country.
Screaming Baboon wants to know if you ever saw any backstage fights.
Never see any backstage. You know who? Oh man. I think not really. The Sheik tried to kill Marty Jannetty after he locked his. I forget where we were at, but anyway, he got a hold of a combination lock, and I think he locked his shower shoes together. Oh, and the other thing was actually, this is kind of a funny story now that you mention it. I think it might have been Cleveland or something like that. Anyway, so I had already wrestled, and I think the Sheik had wrestled as well. Marty put on my Kato costume, and he snuck up on the Sheik and from behind and took him down. And the Sheik, he's a shooter and he was a wrestler, and he was ready to kill Marty. But he thought it was, at first he thought it was me, and I'm like sitting right there. But yeah, it was pretty funny. It never got, the boys wouldn't let it go as far as for Sheik to do anything to Marty, but that was one of the funniest things I've seen.
The Sheik seems like the only guy that could fall for that with someone dressed up as you.
Well, but you know what? He didn't pay attention, and the Sheik, I'm not sure if his mind was quite as sharp as it should have been. If you know
how was your time in WCW? You had a brief run there.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not really sure. Just a thought, but Pat got a job there and he got to actually work and stay there. They brought us in as a tag team. It was fine. Worked. I actually, as a tag team, I remember us working Ricky Steamboat and Arn Anderson. Myself as a singles, I worked, what was his name? Johnny B. Bad, Mark Merrow. I worked Steve Austin as Stunning Steve when they were getting him ready for Muda, I think. And had great matches with those guys. No reason why I at least didn't deserve a job there, but Eric Bischoff was in charge at the time. And, I don't know. I know Eric Bischoff from the AWA days, right? And at that time with Vern, his job was actually operating the camera when we did interviews. So how he became this all-knowing, all-powerful guy in the WCW, I'm not sure. But I realized he really didn't know a whole lot about the business, because after working with Mark Merrow and having a great match, he pulled Mark aside and saying, "Yeah, that's it. You had a great match. Wow, that was awesome." I don't know. I guess maybe I might have had something to do with that. Not sure. So I don't know how that worked out.
And they had some people under contract that rarely ever worked, like Lanny Poffo, under contract for 3 years.
Well, but speaking of people who rarely work, how about you, Hannibal? I haven't seen you do anything in a while. That's right. I don't know if the camera's cutting me off, but the captain is here.
Yeah. There's a fan that actually asked to see one of his kicks on you earlier.
Oh, really? Well, tell that fan he can head over to Captain's Corner Happy Hour tomorrow with Paul Diamond. And so can you, because this interview is over.